Hi guys, it's Frankie from Frankie Tech. Good to see you guys again, and here we are with part 3, the camera showdown and final verdict between the Realme X7 Pro and the K30 Ultra. And if you guys have been following this series, it has gone down to the wire between these phones. So today I'm going to share the full camera showdown of these phones, share the second and final mystery section, and then we will do the final verdict, which is the one value champ of these two phones. Let's get started. So starting with the camera showdown, and let's do a quick overview of the specs of these cameras. So we have the 64 megapixel Sony IMX686 on the Realme X7 Pro versus the 682 on the K30 Ultra. f1.8 versus f1.9. Then we have an 8 megapixel ultra wide versus a 13 megapixel on the K30 Ultra. And we finally round these phones out with these additional garbage cameras as usual. A 2 megapixel macro and depth on the X7 Pro, while the K30 Ultra gives us a 5 megapixel macro camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. And in terms of video on the rear, the Realme X7 Pro does have an advantage of 4K 60fps max video, while the K30 Ultra is limited to 4K 30. And on the fronts, we see a 32 megapixel selfie camera on the Realme X7 Pro versus a 20 megapixel pop-up camera on the K30 Ultra, both capable of full HD 30fps video on the front. And so let's do it, guys. Here I share my full camera samples, both day and night, and video. Which phone is going to come out on top in this definitive camera showdown? Let's have a look at these samples and talk about them when we get back. Rear-facing video on the Realme X7 Pro and the K30 Ultra. And there you see the weather in Hong Kong, guys. 1 minute it's sunny, 1 minute it's raining. You really don't know what you're gonna get. But stabilization looks really good on these phones. Hit me up in the comments. What do you think? And this is front-facing video on the Realme X7 Pro and the K30 Ultra, shooting in full HD. Looks pretty good on both. Hope you guys are doing well, having a great weekend, staying safe. Looks pretty good though. Let's turn around and hit me up in the comments. What do you think? Okay guys, and easily one of the most intense camera showdowns I've ever seen here on the channel. These phones traded blows. In the daytime, it was back and forth with a number of shots that I did enjoy of the K30 Ultra, and yet surprisingly in a lot of these shots, the Realme X7 Pro not only had better colors, but they were brighter and they were also sharper. And it was even more surprising to see that the ultra-wide 8-megapixel camera did a better job than the 13-megapixel on the K30 Ultra. There was like this pink hue on a lot of the K30 Ultra's ultra-wide shots that I didn't really like. I think overall, the Realme X7 Pro took the edge in daytime photography. And then in nighttime, the tables turned the other way, while the Realme X7 Pro did produce some pleasing shots and actually captured a bit more light than the K30 Ultra. There was one thing about the Realme X7 Pro I did not like, and that was this painterly effect that you could see in a lot of these nighttime shots that I just do not like. And I would rather take a darker image than have this painterly effect that we saw on the Realme X7 Pro. And so while a number of these shots on the Realme X7 Pro were a bit better and also a bit sharper, I still think overall the K30 Ultra had the edge in nighttime photography. And in video, it was very close as well. And while the K30 Ultra's sample video was a little bit overexposed, I think generally the stabilization on this phone is better. And the mics are also better on the K30 Ultra. And in terms of front video, the K30 Ultra also got the win. Guys, this is one of the closest camera battles I've ever had to call on the channel. In daytime and ultra-wides, the edge goes to the Realme X7 Pro. But in nighttime, video stabilization, and in a lot of the daytime shots, I think the K30 Ultra still did a solid job. So because of that, it's going to come down to one spec that I think the Realme X7 Pro has as an advantage over this phone, and that is 4K 60 FPS video recording. And yes, I understand guys, before you get upset, yes, the painterly images is a negative thing. And yes, the K30 Ultra definitely did better in a lot of these shots. But if I'm thinking of the most well-rounded camera specs of either of these phones, the inclusion of 4K 60 FPS on the Realme X7 Pro is a big deal. And let me tell you, it's a great thing to have on a phone at this price point. Now, in theory, the K30 Ultra should be fully capable of doing 4K 60 as well, but it has not been included on this phone. While on the Realme X7 Pro, it has. And so while a part of me wants to say this is a tie and really throw it back to you guys as a toss-up, you decide whichever one you think is best, we need to pick a winner here. And by the thinnest of margins, because of that 4K 60 video capability, I give the full camera win to the Realme X7 Pro. And now guys, for the final section of this epic comparison, and maybe you guessed what it was, it's none other than the most important spec of all, price and value. And when you look at the introductory price points of both of these phones, 2,199 RMB versus 1,999 RMB, you clearly see that both of these phones are offering some of the most incredible value of 2020. And yet the K30 Ultra is destined to be a China-only release, and so because of that, the pricing will vary on this phone all the time, depending on the import price and how much third parties are selling it for. I get it guys, you're not going to be able to get this phone for that $1,999, $287 US price point. You're generally going to be paying around $380 US for the K30 Ultra. But that being said, considering what you're getting for this phone, with this gorgeous uninterrupted display, with the metallic finish, all of these really premium features, it is just one of the most incredible values of the year, even at that third-party markup price. And while the Realme X7 Pro made a valiant effort to try to match Xiaomi in the price to performance ratio department, it just didn't meet the mark. But another very important thing to consider is that this phone is going to be having a global release, as Realme confirmed that in Q4 of 2020, this Realme X7 Pro is going to be released to European markets. But I'm certain when that does happen, it won't be released at that 2,200 RMB price point. I'm predicting a 399 or even 450 euro price point for this Realme X7 Pro series. And so when you factor that into the price point of this phone, you realize that the gulf between this X7 Pro and the K30 Ultra is even wider. And yes, I get it. A lot of you will want to pay more for the global version of this phone. But even at $399, it still will not match the incredible value that Xiaomi is offering with this K30 Ultra. Realme made a valiant effort to beat Xiaomi in the price to performance battle this year with this X7 Pro. But there's no denying that Xiaomi is still the champ when it comes to offering the greatest price to performance ratios in the industry. And the K30 Ultra is really the best example of that. And so when it comes to price and overall value, I give the win here to the K30 Ultra. And so that's it for this epic comparison, guys. And now the final verdict between these two phones. Doing a quick recap of these final sections, the Realme X7 Pro won by the slightest of margins the most controversial and contested camera showdown ever in the history of Frankie Tech. It came down to one video spec, being able to shoot 4K 60 FPS, but when it came to the price and overall value section, the K30 Ultra just cannot be beat. It is still going to win any pricing conversation versus any phone, even the Realme X7 Pro. And so when you look at the final point standings, it was probably the closest battle here ever on the channel, but the overall winner with 7 points to 6 is the Realme X7 Pro. And guys, I know a number of these sections could have gone the other way, and I'm going to hear about it in the comments, I'm sure. But despite the fact that this phone has a plastic build quality that I really don't like, Xiaomi fans, you need to accept the fact that the Realme X7 Pro is a terrific release. And let's also not forget that this phone won a lot of the fundamental categories from display, performance, battery with that 65-watt super dart charging, and by the slightest of margins, camera. Now honestly, that last section of price and value could almost be an overriding section of this entire comparison. And so for a lot of you guys out there, it doesn't matter how good this Realme X7 Pro is, because you will be looking for the ultimate price to performance champion. And so despite being one of the best offerings of 2020 and winning this epic comparison, there's no denying that the ultimate value champ is still the K30 Ultra. Guys, I think all points and comparisons aside, I think this is a moment we should all be very happy about, having amazing offerings from both Realme and Redmi to choose from. And I think, if anything, that is something that both sides can agree upon. But hit me up in the comments. What are your thoughts on this final verdict? Did it surprise you? And which phone of these two would you pick as the winner of this epic comparison? Hit me up in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. And that's it for this video. If you liked it, give me that thumbs up. And if you love the content of Frankie Tech, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon for future updates. So thanks for watching this epic comparison, guys. Definitely going to take a break for the rest of the weekend. So happy weekend to you guys. And this is where I leave you by saying, this is Frankie Tech signing off. Have a good one. I'm glad that is done. That was so tense, and I can't wait to see the comments section after this one.